بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم الحمد لله رب العالمين صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم أخرجني من ظلمات الوهم وأكرمني بنور الفهم اللهم افتح علينا أبواب رحمتك وانشر علينا خزائن علومك برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. Hope Alhamdulillah we have tawfiq to start lesson 5 of the book History of Shia Islam. This lesson is about Imam Kazim alayhi salam and Imam Rida alayhi salam. And in this lesson we learn about the life of Imam Kazim alayhi salam. We study some of the major incidents and events which are political and social during Imamah of Imam Kazim alayhi salam. Then we will be introduced to the life of Imam Rida alayhi salam and some of his activities in cultural and social areas. Then about the situation of the Shia in the time of Imam Rida alayhi salam and some of the counter policies of Imam against measures made by Ma'mun Abbasi, the Abbasid Caliph. Okay, let us start with Imam Kazim alayhi salam. Imam Musa ibn Ja'far alayhi salam is the 7th Imam of the Shia. His kunya or nickname is Abul Hasan. Several Imams are called Abul Hasan. Of course, the first is Amirul Mu'minin alayhi salam. But normally in the hadith, when it is said Abul Hasan and nothing else is mentioned, it's not used for Amirul Mu'minin. For Amirul Mu'minin, normally say Amirul Mu'minin Imam Ali alayhi salam. So when they say Abul Hasan, normally they mean Imam Kazim alayhi salam. But because Imam Rida also is called Abul Hasan and Imam al-Hadi is also called Abul Hasan, so sometimes they say Abul Hasan al-Awwal to make sure that it's Imam Kazim alayhi salam, or Abul Hasan al-Madi, the previous Abul Hasan. He had different titles like Abd Salih, Nafs Zakiyya, Zainul Mujtahidin. Mujtahid here is used in the literal sense, not Mujtahid in the sense of faqih. For Imams we don't use Mujtahid because Imams don't need to struggle for understanding. Their knowledge comes from Allah. It's not based on reasoning and ijtihad. Here Mujtahid means like what Amir al-Mu'minin said, A'inuni biwara'in wa ijtihad. Is working hard. Sabir, Wafi. He was known as Wafi, someone who is very loyal. Amin, Zahid, someone who has no interest in dunya. And Kazim. So Al-Kazim is his laqab. His name is Musa, but his laqab is Al-Kazim, which means someone who has control over his anger, who can suppress his anger. He's very patient. Inshallah, we will talk about this. His father was Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. His mother was a pious lady known as Humayda. Humayda means lady who is very praised, for example. Humayda Barbariya. And there is a box here that she was a maid from Andalus and was wife of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, and she was very virtuous. So our Imams when they saw someone has human qualities and virtues, then they didn't bother if it is, for example, a maid or a slave and freed, for example, or they freed themselves. It's a human being. Islam doesn't believe in this kind of discrimination. She was very virtuous to the extent that sometimes Imam Sadiq was referring people for their fiqh questions to Humayda and sometimes also to Farwa. So when Imam Sadiq alayhi salam wanted to distribute huquq of people of Medina, he left it to Lady Farwa and Lady Humayda. Imam was born, according to some sources, in the months of the Hajj. Just we had it recently. And also he was poisoned in the months of Safar, according to some sources, on the 7th of Safar. He was Imam for 35 years. So he has the longest period of Imamah apart from Imam Mahdi Ajalallah Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif. Then there is something for personal study about the title of Kazim and how much Imam was in control of his anger. There's a beautiful story that once a person insulted Amirul Mu'minin alayhi salam in the presence of Imam Kazim alayhi salam. Some people were very upset and they wanted to attack him, but Imam didn't let them and went to the farm of that person. That person who didn't like Imam and Ahlul Bayt, when someone insults Amirul Mu'minin, you can imagine how he would feel about Imam Kazim alayhi salam. As soon as saw Imam Kazim started shouting, don't damage my, farm, etc. Imam went close to him with a kind, face and said, how much you have spent on your farm? He said, 100 dinar. Buying seeds and, cultivating, etc. Imam said, how much do you hope to get from harvest? He said, I don't know ilmul ghaib. Imam said, I didn't say you know ilmul ghaib. I said, how much you hope? He said, 200 dinar. So he had spent 100 dinar so that he can make extra 100 dinar, so 100 to cover his cost, 100 extra, yeah? But Imam gave him 300 dinar and said, this is for you. Whatever you harvest also is for you. So if you harvest 200, then you will have 500. Then Imam went to Masjid and moved towards Masjid. He went quickly and went inside Masjid, and when he saw Imam Kazim alayhi salam, the same person that insulted Amirul Mu'minin was angry with Imam just approaching his farm, said, Allahu a'lamu haythu yaj'alu risalatah. Allah knows where to put his mission. This ayah is for messengers, but it's for any divine position. Allah knows better, who is called. Meaning that you are Ahlul Bayt and Allah has wisely chosen you. So we have many cases like this in the life of Imams, that how much they were patient and how much they were kind, generous, and many people, when they see genuine kindness, they change because their mind is filled with, bad things and then all those stereotypes will collapse. He also very much encouraged his children to be very patient. For example, he is quoted as he collected his children and said, "My children, I advise you to do something that would be beneficial for you if you listen. If someone comes to you and whispers to your right ear something, maybe something bad, something you don't like, okay? He himself says to your right ear, you don't like it. Then he goes to the left ear and asks for apologies, brings excuses. Imam said, accept it. For example, he says, I didn't mean that, or no, I was angry, or no, please forgive me, or anyway, or he says, I didn't say that. Any excuse that he brings, accept. You don't need to say, no, you are not right, now that you, for example, have no choice, you are trying to deceive me, etc., etc. No. Let alone if someone brings news and said, so and so said this, and when you meet that person, he said, no, I didn't say this, or I didn't mean this. You accept. You should accept. You say, إن العذر عند كرام الناس مقبول. Those who are kareem, they easily accept apologies. Those who are not kareem, they don't accept at all, or if they accept, it's after, really damaging that person's reputation and, saying, you have done something wrong, and then, but because I am Kareem, they pretend I'm Kareem. No, I will forgive you. But Kareem even doesn't say you are forgiven. Kareem many times says, don't worry, I knew that you are a good person. I knew that, this must not be from you. Somehow bring something so that that person feels comfortable, doesn't feel embarrassed. Because Karim doesn't want to embarrass people as much as possible. Then we have a discussion about events after the martyrdom of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. In the time of some of our Imams, situation was very difficult to the extent that Imams were not able to easily, publicly, clearly introduce the next Imam because the life of next Imam was in danger. For example, when Imam Sadiq alayhi salam wanted to make wasiyya, will, if he was making his will to Imam Kazim alayhi salam, they would have killed him. So what he did, Imam made Imam Kazim alayhi salam and his another son, Abdullah, who was the second son. The first son was Ismail, we will talk about him, who died when Imam was alive. Then Abdullah, which has the title Al-Aftah, we will talk about, was the second. So when Imam was passing away, Abdullah was alive, but Ismail was not alive. Imam made Abdullah his wasi, Imam Kazim his wasi, his wife Humayda, mother of Imam Kazim, also his wasi, governor of Medina, and Mansur, the Abbasid Caliph. Imam put all of them as his wasi, so that no one can, find out who is the main, successor to Imam. Wasi in the sense that, for financial things or other things. Of course, people who were clever, people who were from Shia, they knew that Khalifa or his governor are not going to be wasi. But this was a very important plan of Imam alayhi salam. Basically, as we said before, Abbasids, when they took power, they were very much, unfortunately, interested in power. They changed their policy towards Ahlul Bayt. They put lots of pressure because they were feeling very vulnerable, and they felt Ahlul Bayt, may, take power from them. Even the people who helped them, like Abu Salame al-Kufi, Abu Muslim al-Khurasani, Abdullah ibn Ali Abbasi, who helped them, they also killed them, let alone Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. One problem that happened, because as I said, Imam was not able to very publicly say, and also people are always tested, was about Ismail, the eldest son of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. He was very, pious person, but he died before the martyrdom of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. And of course, in the hadith, even from before, we know that who would be the next Imam. But some people thought, as we have in some hadith, thought that Ismail is going to be the next Imam. He was so nice and was the eldest son. But he died before. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam made some important things so that no one remains in confusion. It's very interesting. So Zurarat ibn A'yan says, Imam Sadiq asked him to bring some of the reliable reporters or narrators. He says they came, and with others who joined, there were 30 people. This is when Ismail had died. Imam said, O Dawood, remove the cover of the face of Ismail, the kafan, so that his face can be seen. Then Imam said, O Dawood, is Ismail alive or dead? He said, he is dead. Then Imam asked all the people who were there, those 30 reliable narrators, so that no one questions them, to look at the dead body of Ismail and bear witness that he has died. When they took him to Baqi', Imam again asked people to look at the body of Ismail and say that he has died, because Imam knows what is going to happen. But unfortunately, some people later said that Ismail is still alive, or Ismail is raised by Allah. And so this was one problem. Another problem was because of Abdullah. Abdullah al-Aftah. Aftah in Arabic is used for someone who has wide feet, or some people say a wide head, but normally say wide feet. So he was known, maybe his feet were wider than average, or maybe just people gave him this title. Sheikh Mufid says his position with Imam Sadiq was not like other brothers, because he had a different attitude. He was not following his father. He was not very much loyal to the teachings of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. So Abdullah at some point claimed to be Imam, and some people followed him. They are known as Fatahiyya, because they follow Abdullah al-Aftah. They call them Fatahiyya. "70 days after martyrdom of Imam Sadiq," so he started this before, but 70 days after martyrdom of Imam Sadiq, Abdullah al-Aftah died, and his followers then returned to Imam Kazim alayhi salam. So this was also a problem. Although maybe there was something good in this, because when Khalifa was seeing that there are problems inside the Shia community, maybe this was telling them, okay, don't worry, you don't need to do anything. They are themselves, differing and, maybe having conflict. Maybe there was some hidden grace in that anyway. Ismail was someone that they claimed he was Mahdi. And also some claim that Muhammad ibn Ismail, Muhammad his son, was the Imam. Even some people who believed in Imamah of Ahmad ibn Muhammad ibn Hanafiyyah, they later followed Muhammad ibn Ismail. So you see that there are issues that led to separation here. Ubaydullah al-Mahdi was the first Fatimi, they were Ismaili Khalifa, and he tried, to, make some improvements. Anyway, Ismailis, although in the beginning, in the first few decades, they were not very popular, but later, because of certain things, they managed to gain some significance and some position, and even form some dynasties. There is a story here also that Mu'min al-Taq and Hisham, they were in Medina. So Hisham ibn Salim, he says, with Mu'min al-Taq, we went around. We saw, this is, after martyrdom of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. He said, we saw some people go to the house, some Shia, go to the house of Abdullah ibn Ja'far, meaning Abdullah Aftah. And he says, basically they thought maybe he's the successor, Hisham says, we asked him some questions about zakat, but he didn't give right answer. So we came out, we didn't know what to do, where to go. We saw an old person. We thought he's a spy of Khalifa, but he was not a spy. He was a good person. He took us to the house of Imam al-Kazim alayhi salam. And then he says, when we were there, Fudail and Abu Basir, two important figures in the Shia community, they arrived. And they asked Imam some questions. Of course, I think they were sure that for the sake of formality and for the sake of other people witnessing the knowledge of Imam. And when Imam answered, they were all satisfied. And then he says, people in groups, they went to Imam Kazim alayhi salam, except those who were following Ammar Sabati, and very little who followed Abdullah Aftah. Great majority followed Imam Kazim alayhi salam. So, because of political pressure, even such an important thing was not very much publicly shared, that who is the successor. And at the same time, people are not left without guidance. They could go and test who is most knowledgeable, because knowledge is a requirement of imamah. During the imamah of Imam Kazim alayhi salam, the there were different Abbasid caliphs. Up to 158 after Hijrah was Mansur, who caused martyrdom of Imam Sadiq. So for 10 years, Mansur himself was Khalifa. After him, Muhammad al-Mahdi was the Khalifa. You see, they were calling themselves with beautiful, names: Al-Mahdi, Al-Muhtadi, Al-Hadi, etc. So he was for some time, but not long. Then was Musa al-Hadi for about 1 year. Then was Harun al-Rashid up to 193. So for many years, Harun al-Rashid was Khalifa. So Imam Kazim had to live contemporary to Mansur, his son Muhammad al-Mahdi, then the son of Muhammad al-Mahdi, Musa al-Hadi, and then Harun al-Rashid. There were many movements and uprisings at that time. For example, the most important one was by some of the progeny of Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba alayhi salam, in particular Hussein ibn Ali al-Khair, in the year 169 in Medina, which led to his martyrdom and many of his helpers in Fakh. Fakh is a place near Mecca. So when they say Ashab Fakh or Shuhada Fakh, they refer to this movement. There is no evidence that he had support and instruction from Imam Kazim alayhi salam. And it doesn't match Imam Sadiq's style, because Imam's style was not to have any militant movement. But when he started the movement, because he was from Imam Hassan progeny, he was from basically the same family, so majority of Alawite took part in his movement, but Imam had told him that you will be defeated and you will be killed. Brother of Muhammad Nafs al-Zakiyya that we talked about him before was Idris, the son of Abdullah Mahd. He took part in this movement of Fakh, but after they were defeated, he managed to run away to Maghreb, Morocco. Today we call it Morocco. And over there established Adarisa dynasty. For about 200 years, they were ruling in Maghreb. Then there were other movements by Alawites and Shia, like Zaydis. But the differences between mainstream of Shia, who later are known as 12ers, but at that time, they were up to Imam 7, but they knew that there would be 12 Imam. And Zaydis started from the time of killing of Zayd. And then in the time of movement of Nafs al-Zakiyya in 145 reached its peak. Imam Kazim was very much emphasizing on being careful, being observing and exercising taqiyya. And despite this, because the Khalifa knew of Imam's knowledge, piety, love of people for him, and knew that Imam is trying to organize the Shia, because the network of Wukala agents started in time of Imam Kazim alayhi salam. He was supporting the Shia culturally, education wise, etc. They were against Imam. But imagine if Imam wanted to do something like, those people who started movements. They would have killed him right away. Still, Imam, without doing these things, was so much under pressure and so much he was put in prison. First, he was put in prison in Baghdad, the capital, by Mahdi Abbasi. Maybe because he was aware of Imam's distribution of money among the poor Shia and some of his cultural religious activities, which was strengthening the Shia. He was very much against Imam. Imam was in Medina. He sent message to his governor, his agent in Medina, to arrest Imam Kazim and send him to Baghdad. When Imam Kazim was in prison in Baghdad, Mahdi had a dream of Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salam. And in his dream, Amirul Mu'mineen recited this ayah: فَهَلْ عَسَيْتُمْ إِن تَوَلَّيْتُمْ أَن تُفْسِدُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ وَتُقَطِّعُوا أَرْحَامَكُمْ. Chapter 47, verse 22. If you turn away, do you want to do mischief in the earth and disconnect from your rahim? These are supposed to be cousins of Ahlul Bayt from Abbas. Anyway, when he woke up, he called his Hajib, his guard, and said to bring Imam Kazim from prison. Then he asked Imam Sadiq to sit next to him and said, I saw Amirul Mu'mineen in my dream, and he recited this ayah. So he said to Imam Kazim, can you assure me, can you promise that you would not uprise against me or any of my children? Imam said, by Allah, I have never done such a thing, and this is not, my shan, this is not, something suitable for me, or this is not my, like to do this. So Imam totally dismissed this. Then Khalifa gave some gifts to Imam, and sent Imam alayhi salam back to Medina. So this was the first time that Imam was in prison. One day Imam was next to Mahdi Abbasi, and Imam saw that Mahdi is giving some money as Radd Mazalim. Radd Mazalim in fiqh. When you owe something and you don't have knowledge to whom you owe, or you have no way to make the money reach that person, so you give Radd Mazalim. So you should give it to someone who has walaya, like Hakim al-Shar, etc. In the time of Imam, of course, Imam, I don't know to whom he was giving, it's not mentioned here, but he wanted to give Radd Mazalim. Imam said, why you don't give back to us what has been taken unjustly from us? Mahdi said, what was taken unjustly from you? Imam mentioned the story of Fadak. He said Fadak was one of those lands that was given to the Prophet without fighting. We call them Fay, Amwal Fay. There was no fighting, no horse, was riding over it, etc. This was for the Prophet, and Prophet gave it to Lady Fatima. Mahdi Abbasi said, draw for me the boundaries of Fadak. When Imam gave him the boundaries, he said, this is too much. I have to think about it. But then he never gave it back. There is a map here. I hope you can see the map. All the yellow area was under Abbasid. So the Khalifa was able to rule over some part of North and Northeast Africa, Arab Peninsula, part of Minor Asia, up to Iran, Afghanistan, part of Pakistan, Tajikistan, Bukhara, Samarkand, Badakhshan in Afghanistan, Peshawar, all these places, Oman, Bahrain, all were under the Abbasids. Just Adarasa managed to establish something in Morocco. So this part became independent. You have here a list of Abbasid caliphs. So Mansur from 136 up to 158. Of course, part of it was during Imam Sadiq, part of it was during Imam Kazim. Mahdi from 158 to 169. Hadi, just 1 year, 169 to 170. And Harun al-Rashid, 170 up to 193 for 23 years. Then we have some discussion about martyrdom and some of the wise teachings of Imam, some of his spirituality. Inshallah, we can discuss next week. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen.